My mother's frantic 2 a.m. call ripped me from sleep with a terrifying demand: save my brother or sacrifice my entire future. The sound that shattered the silence of my bedroom wasn't just a ringtone, it was a siren. A shrill, insistent wail that cut through the dead of night and straight into my nervous system. You know that deep, dreamless sleep where you feel like you're 1,000 miles away? That's where I was, and my phone dragged me back with the brutal force of a car crash. I jolted upright, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Beside me, my fiancé, Mark, groaned and rolled over, burying his head under a pillow. My eyes struggled to focus on the glowing screen. 2:07 a.m. caller ID, Mom. A call from my mother at this hour could only mean one thing: my younger brother, Leo. My hand was shaking as I swiped to answer. Mom, what's wrong? Is it Leo? I was met with a strangled sob. It was the kind of crying that's so raw it sounds like choking. Chloe, she gasped, her voice thick and wet with tears. Oh, honey, it's terrible. It's Leo. He's in trouble. Horrible trouble. I was already out of bed, pacing the cold wooden floor of our small apartment. What kind of trouble? What happened? Is he hurt? Then my dad's voice came on the line, sharp and commanding, overriding my mom's hysterics. Chloe, stop asking questions and listen. There's no time. Leo, he got in over his head. You know how he can be. He made a mistake. A very, very big mistake. I knew exactly how Leo could be. My brother was a whirlwind of charm and chaos. He was the golden child, the one who could talk his way into and out of anything. But his charm often led him down paths paved with bad decisions. There was the misunderstanding with his college roommate's car, the gambling app that mysteriously racked up a few thousand on my dad's credit card, the string of short-lived jobs he'd quit because his bosses didn't appreciate his creative genius. My parents always made excuses. I always worried. Dad, just tell me what's going on, I pleaded, my voice trembling. He owes people money, Dad said, his voice low and urgent. Not the bank, Chloe. Not nice people. They're dangerous. They have him. They called us an hour ago. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. They have him? What do you mean they have him? My mom started wailing again in the background. They're going to hurt him, Chloe. They said they'll break his legs if we don't pay. A cold dread, sharp and icy, snaked its way up my spine. This was different. This wasn't a speeding ticket or a bounce check. This felt real, terrifyingly real. How much? I whispered, almost afraid to hear the answer. How much do they want? There was a pause, a heavy, suffocating silence that stretched for a lifetime. Then Dad said the number. $15,000. I literally choked. 15? Dad, that's impossible. We don't have that kind of money. You know we don't. We don't, he said, his voice cracking with a desperation I'd never heard before. We've drained everything. Our savings, our emergency fund. We have a little over 5,000. But you do, Chloe. You and Mark. Your wedding money. I felt like he'd slapped me. Our wedding money. The money Mark and I had painstakingly saved for 2 years. Every extra shift I picked up, every weekend Mark spent freelancing, every small luxury we'd sacrificed, all sitting in a high-yield savings account, earmarked for the venue deposit, the caterer, the dress. It was more than just money. It was the foundation of the future we were building, brick by painful brick. Dad, you can't be serious, I stammered. That's everything we have. Is your wedding more important than your brother's life? He shot back, his voice turning hard and accusatory. Is a party more important than keeping your brother from being crippled? They want the money by sunrise, Chloe. By sunrise. We have 3 hours. We need you to transfer the money to our account. Now. By now, Mark was sitting up, the concern on his face illuminated by the glow of my phone. He could only hear my side of the conversation, but his expression was a mixture of confusion and alarm. He mouthed, "What is it?" I put the phone on speaker, my hand trembling so badly I almost dropped it. I couldn't form the words myself. Let him hear it. "You're the only one who can help us, honey." My mom was sobbing through the speaker. "Please, he's our baby boy. He's your little brother. You can't let them do this to him." Mark's eyes widened as he listened. He's an engineer, methodical and logical to a fault. While I was drowning in a sea of panic and emotion, his mind was already dissecting the situation, looking for the flaws. "Wait," Mark said, his voice calm but firm, speaking towards the phone. "Mr. Henderson, this is Mark. Who are these people? Did you get a name? Where are they holding Leo?" My dad sputtered on the other end. "It doesn't matter who they are. They're animals. They told us not to call the police or Leo is dead. Do you understand? No police." "Okay, I understand," Mark said, his eyes locking with mine, trying to ground me. "But how are you supposed to get them the money? Are you meeting them? Are you wiring it? What's the plan?" They'll call with instructions once we have the full amount," my dad said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice for the first time. "They just said to get it ready. Chloe, for the love of God, stop letting your fiancé interrogate me and send the money. Every minute we waste is another minute Leo is in danger." The guilt was a physical weight, pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. They were right. What if I was wasting precious time? What if Leo was terrified, hurt, alone, waiting for me to save him? My little brother. The same boy I taught to ride a bike, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged 100 times. I grabbed my phone, my thumb hovering over the banking app. $15,000, the price of our future, the cost of Leo's safety. How could I even hesitate? Mark put a gentle hand on my arm. "Chloe, wait. Just 1 second. Think." "There's no time to think," I hissed, pulling my arm away. The conflict was tearing me apart, my loyalty to my family, my commitment to Mark. "Chloe, please, we're begging you." My mom shrieked, her voice rising to a fever pitch. "If you don't do this, whatever happens to him will be on you. Do you want that on your conscience?" That was it. The final push. The thought of Leo being hurt and it being my fault. I couldn't bear it. I took a shaky breath, my vision blurring with tears. "Okay," I whispered into the phone. "Okay, I'll do it. I'm opening the app now." A wave of relief washed through the phone from my parents. I navigated to the transfer page, my fingers feeling like clumsy sausages on the screen. I selected my dad's account. I typed in the amount, 15,000. My entire body felt cold, numb. I was about to detonate a bomb in the middle of my own life. My finger moved to the final confirmation button. And then my phone vibrated, a different vibration. A notification banner slid down from the top of the screen, momentarily obscuring the banking app. My blood ran cold. On the other line, my mother was still sobbing, but her cries suddenly sounded hollow, rehearsed. Because my phone screen wasn't just lit up. It was displaying a new incoming call. The caller ID, our local police department. My finger froze, hovering over the glowing green "Confirm Transfer" button. It was a digital guillotine, poised to sever my future from my present. The world seemed to slow down, the frantic sobbing of my mother on the speaker turning into a distorted, distant buzz. All I could see was that notification banner at the top of my screen. Incoming call, local police dept. Mark saw it too. His eyes snapped from my face to the phone, and a flicker of something sharp and certain crossed his features. He saw the incongruity, the statistical impossibility of it. "Mom? Dad?" My voice came out as a strangled whisper. The police are calling me." The reaction was instantaneous and violent. "Don't answer it," my father roared, his voice losing its desperate pleading quality and morphing into pure, panicked command. "It's a trap, Chloe. They're testing us. The kidnappers, they must be watching your phone. Hang up on them and send the money, now!" My mother's wails escalated into a theatrical shriek. They'll know we're talking to the police. Oh God, Chloe, they're going to hurt him because of you. Please, honey, just send the money. But their panic was too loud, too rehearsed. It was the frantic overacting of a child caught with their hand in the cookie jar. It didn't sound like fear for Leo's life. It sounded like fear of being caught. Mark's hand closed over mine, firm and steady, stopping my thumb from completing its devastating journey. "Answer it, Chloe," he said, his voice a low anchor in the storm of my parents' hysteria. He gently took the phone from my trembling grasp, his movements deliberate. He looked at the screen, put our current call on hold, and swiped to accept the incoming one. He hit the speaker button again, and the car crash of my parents' voices was replaced by a calm, professional tone. "Hello, am I speaking with Chloe Henderson?" "This is her fiancé, Mark. She's right here," Mark answered, his eyes never leaving mine. "Is everything all right, officer?" "Yes, sir. My name is Officer Davies. I'm calling from the Northwood Precinct. We're calling in regards to your fiancé's brother, Leo Henderson. I just want to assure you right away, he's perfectly safe. There's no cause for alarm." The words, "perfectly safe," hit me with the force of a physical blow. I swayed on my feet, grabbing the edge of the nightstand for support. Safe. Not in a dark warehouse, not with his legs about to be broken. Perfectly safe. The relief was so profound it was painful, but it was immediately followed by a wave of cold, nauseating confusion. "Safe?" I managed to choke out. "But my parents said They said he was taken." There was a brief pause on the officer's end. "Taken? Ma'am, I'm not sure what information you've received, but your brother has been in our custody here at the station for the last 90 minutes. We brought him in following a minor traffic accident on Elm Street. He appears to have been driving under the influence." A DUI. A fender bender. Not a kidnapping. Not a $15,000 ransom. My brother wasn't being held by violent criminals. He was sleeping it off in a drunk tank. The entire elaborate horror story my parents had woven, the terror that had me seconds away from bankrupting my future, was a lie. A sick, twisted, manipulative lie. Rage, pure and undiluted, surged through me, burning away the fear and the guilt. It was so potent, it made me dizzy. I snatched the phone from Mark's hand. I tapped the screen, merging the calls. "Mom? Dad? Are you still there?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. A cacophony erupted. "Chloe, what did you do? You fool!" my dad bellowed. "He's still on the line, isn't he? The policeman!" my mom cried. "Yes, he is," I said, my voice like ice. "Officer Davies, would you mind repeating where my brother is and what his condition is for my parents?" The calm official voice filled the silence once more. "Good morning. Your son, Leo Henderson, is currently in a holding cell at the Northwood Precinct. He is unharmed and will likely be eligible for bail in a few hours, pending a formal charge for driving under the influence." Dead silence. The line, which had been filled with sobs and screams and frantic demands, was now utterly still. The lie had been cornered and killed, right there on a three-way call at 2:30 in the morning. I could almost hear their minds scrambling, the gears grinding as they tried to figure a way out of the wreckage they'd created. "So," I began, my voice trembling with a fury I had never felt in my life. "He's not being held for ransom. His legs are not about to be broken. You called me, you woke me up, you terrorized me, you guilted me. You tried to make me hand over every single penny Mark and I have saved for our future. For a lie. Why?" My dad finally spoke, his voice a pathetic whimper. "Chloe, honey, you don't understand. It's complicated." "No," I cut him off. "It's not complicated. You lied. Now tell me why." There was another moment of silence. I was about to scream at them, to demand an answer, when Officer Davies' calm voice unexpectedly cut in again. He hadn't hung up. "Ma'am? Mr. Henderson?" the officer said, addressing my parents directly through the phone. "Maybe you should answer your daughter's question, because when we picked your son up, he was frantic. He kept telling us he didn't need a lawyer, he just needed to get his hands on $15,000 in cash before sunrise. He said it was an urgent family matter. Given what your daughter just told me, I think we're all very interested to know what that urgent family matter really is. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't just a lie they told me, it was a story they had coordinated with Leo. The $15,000 wasn't just a random number they'd plucked from the air. It was a specific amount for a specific sinister purpose. My gaze fell on Mark, and I saw the same horrifying realization dawn on his face. He shook his head slowly, his eyes wide with a new kind of dread. The officer wasn't finished. His next words landed like a judge's gavel, sentencing us all to a new, darker reality. You see, the DUI isn't our primary concern right now. Our concern is the young woman who was in the other car, the one Leo hit. She was airlifted to University Hospital with critical injuries, and we found a gym bag full of empty prescription bottles on Leo's passenger seat. The world tilted on its axis. The story didn't just shatter, it reassembled itself into something far more monstrous. A critically injured woman, a gym bag of empty pill bottles. A DUI was the least of it. This wasn't about my brother's irresponsibility anymore. This was about his criminality. On the other end of the line, there was a click. My parents were gone. They had hung up the second the officer's words exposed the true, ugly depth of the situation. They had fled the conversation like cockroaches from the light. The silence they left behind was vast and terrifying. It was filled with the ghost of a helicopter's rotors, the phantom beep of hospital machines, the imagined rattling of dozens of empty pill bottles. "Ma'am? Chloe?" Officer Davies' voice was gentle now, laced with a professional pity that made my skin crawl. "Are you still there?" "Yes," I breathed, my knuckles white from gripping the phone. "Yes, I'm here." "I'm sorry you had to find out like this," he said. "It's a very serious situation. Your brother isn't talking much, but he's lawyered up. Said he made his one phone call to your parents. He was very specific about needing that money before morning." My mind was a maelstrom. The lies were a tangled nest of vipers. They hadn't called me because Leo was kidnapped. They had called me because Leo had told them to. The $15,000. It wasn't a ransom. It was something else. Something connected to this woman, to the accident, to the pills. Was it hush money? Money to flee the country? Money for a high-powered lawyer who specialized in making felonies disappear? What happens now? I asked, my voice small. For your brother, he'll be arraigned in the morning. For the victim, she's in surgery. It's touch and go. For you, I'd advise you and your fiancé to get some rest if you can. You can come down to the station in the morning if you want to get more information. And Chloe, he paused, his tone becoming serious again. I wouldn't transfer any money to anyone until you understand exactly what's going on. We won't, Mark said, his voice firm. He took the phone from me and thanked the officer before ending the call. The apartment was deathly quiet again. The adrenaline that had been pumping through my veins turned to ice water. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my body trembling uncontrollably. "Mark," I whispered, wrapping my arms around myself. "What have they done?" He sat beside me, wrapping me in a blanket and pulling me close. He didn't offer empty platitudes or easy answers. He just held me, his solid presence a small island in the wreckage. "They lied," he said, his voice low and tight with anger. "They lied about everything. They were going to let us drain our life savings, not to save Leo from fake kidnappers, but to help him cover up this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the accident, the drugs, the critically injured woman. My mind started replaying the past few years, but now the memories were cast in a sickly, sinister light. Leo, always needing a few $100s for car trouble or a bill he forgot. My mom slipping him cash with a conspiratorial wink. My dad sighing about Leo's bad luck while writing another check. They weren't just enabling a charming screw-up, they were funding an addict. The empty pill bottles weren't a surprise. They were a destination I had been too blind or too unwilling to see. And the rage came back, hot and sharp. "They used me," I said, the words tasting like ash. "They used my love for him, my fear. My mother told me it would be on my conscience if he got hurt. My own mother." The betrayal was a physical pain, a sharp stabbing in my chest. This wasn't just a lie, it was a violation. They had looked at the future Mark and I were building, at our hard-earned dreams, and saw it as nothing more than a personal ATM to fund my brother's destructive spiral. We sat like that for what felt like hours, the blue light of dawn beginning to creep through the blinds. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw flashing ambulance lights. We made a pot of coffee, the familiar ritual feeling hollow and strange. We had a plan, a fragile one. We would go to the precinct. We would face whatever fresh hell the morning brought. We would do it together. I felt my phone buzz against the kitchen counter. My heart seized, thinking it was my parents, ready with a new tapestry of lies. I flipped it over. It was a text message from a number I didn't recognize. My hands were still shaking as I unlocked the screen and opened the message. There were only 2 sentences. "Your brother wasn't lying about the danger. He just got the victim wrong." I stared at the words, my blood running cold. What did that even mean? I showed the phone to Mark, whose face went pale as he read it. Before either of us could process the first message, a second one came through from the same number. "The girl he hit is the daughter of a very powerful, very unforgiving man. The $15K isn't for lawyers, it's a down payment to convince him not to handle this his own way." The kitchen, which moments before had felt like a safe harbor, suddenly seemed thin and vulnerable. The anonymous text messages hung in the air like toxic spores, infecting the fragile sense of clarity we thought we had. A down payment to a powerful, unforgiving man. This wasn't about the legal system anymore. This was something darker, something that operated in the shadows where justice was a commodity to be bought and sold. Mark's analytical mind immediately went into overdrive. "It could be a bluff," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Your parents trying a different tactic now that the kidnapping story is blown." "Would they do that?" I whispered, looking at my phone as if it were a venomous snake. "Would they invent a mob boss after the fake kidnappers failed?" It sounded insane, like something out of a bad movie. But then again, an hour ago, I would have said my parents would never try to trick me out of $15,000. The rule book of my family had been set on fire. "We don't know what they're capable of anymore," he admitted, running a hand through his hair. "But this changes things. If this is true, Leo didn't just cause a DUI accident. He drove straight into a hornet's nest." The name of the man, the father, wasn't mentioned. It didn't have to be. The implication was enough. This was someone who didn't need the police, who didn't wait for a verdict. He dispensed his own brand of justice. And my brother, high on a cocktail of pills, had just put that man's daughter in the hospital. The $15,000 wasn't for Leo's defense. It was for his survival. The police, the legal system, the charges, all of it seemed secondary now. A manageable, bureaucratic nightmare compared to the formless, terrifying threat hinted at in those texts. My parents' lie suddenly felt less like a simple, greedy deception and more like a desperate, clumsy attempt to solve a problem they couldn't possibly handle. They weren't just trying to get Leo out of trouble. They were trying to keep him from getting buried. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Do we show this to the police?" Mark shook his head. "And say what? An anonymous number texted us a vague threat? They'd dismiss it. We have no proof, no names, nothing. It just looks like family drama." He was right. We were on our own with this. My phone buzzed again. Same number. My heart leaped into my throat. This time, it wasn't a text. It was a picture. A grainy photo, clearly taken from a distance with a telephoto lens. It showed the front entrance of my apartment building. My building. Standing just outside the glass doors, shrouded in the pre-dawn gloom, was a man. He was large, wearing a dark coat, and though his face was obscured by shadow, he was staring directly up, towards our window. I stumbled back from the counter, a strangled gasp escaping my lips. Mark grabbed the phone. "When was this taken?" he demanded, as if I would know. He zoomed in, his face tight with a mixture of anger and fear. "He's watching us," I whispered. "They're watching us." The anonymity of the text messages was gone. The threat was no longer an abstract concept. It was standing on my doorstep. My parents weren't just panicking. They had reason to, and they had dragged us right into the middle of it. "Okay," Mark said, his voice low and urgent. He walked over to the window and peered cautiously through a gap in the blinds. He went pale. "He's still there, Chloe. He's across the street now, leaning against a car." My legs gave out, and I sank into a kitchen chair. They knew where I lived. Of course they did. Leo would have told them everything. He would have offered us up on a silver platter if he thought it would save his own skin. He had given them his sister, the one with the wedding fund, the one who was a soft touch. He had painted a target on my back. The puzzle pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture of pure horror. Leo gets high, gets in a car, and nearly kills the daughter of a very dangerous man. That man, bypassing the police, gives Leo an ultimatum: pay up or else. Leo, in custody and desperate, makes his one phone call to our parents. He tells them everything. He tells them he needs 15 grand by sunrise. And he tells them I'm the one who has it. My parents, terrified and out of their depth, concoct the kidnapping story, thinking it's the quickest, most dramatic way to get the money from me without revealing the terrifying truth, a truth that would make any sane person run for the hills. But I hadn't run. I had called the police. I had exposed the lie. And in doing so, I had inadvertently messed up their desperate deal with the devil. My phone rang. This time, the screen lit up with my father's name. I stared at it, my hand shaking too much to answer. Mark reached over and swiped, putting it on speaker. "Chloe, you have to listen to me." My father's voice was a frantic, desperate rush. There was no anger now, only pure, undiluted terror. "You don't understand who these people are. We made a mistake. We panicked. We shouldn't have lied to you, but we were just trying to protect you." "Protect me?" I choked out, a laugh bubbling up that was half sob, half scream. "There's a man standing outside my building, Dad. How is that protecting me?" "I know," he whimpered. "God, I know. He called me. The father. His name is Alistair Croft. He knows you called the police. He thinks we're playing games. He's not a man you play games with, Chloe." Alistair Croft. The name meant nothing to me, but the way my father said it, like it was a curse, sent a fresh wave of ice through my veins. He said the deal is changing," my dad continued, his voice cracking. 15,000 was the price to keep him from interfering, to let the law handle it. But now that we've involved the law, the price has gone up. He doesn't just want money anymore, he wants collateral. The word hung in the air, heavy and metallic. Collateral. It wasn't a business term. It wasn't a financial request. It was the language of loan sharks and gangsters. It was a word that implied ownership, a pound of flesh. Collateral? Mark's voice was dangerously low, a growl rumbling in his chest. "What the hell does that mean?" "I don't know exactly," my father stammered, his terror palpable through the phone. He wasn't clear. He said since Leo's future is now in the hands of the courts, he wants an insurance policy, something to guarantee our cooperation. He said he wants to meet with me and with Chloe. The coffee in my stomach turned to acid. "Me? Why me? This is Leo's mess. Your mess." "Because you're the one with the money, Chloe," he cried, his voice cracking with a pathetic blend of fear and frustration. "You're the one who called the cops. Croft thinks you're the one calling the shots now. He thinks you're the one who needs to be convinced." The man outside wasn't just watching us. He was waiting for us. I was no longer a third-party ATM in this nightmare. I was being summoned to the main event. Alistair Croft didn't want my money transferred from a safe distance. He wanted me to deliver it. He wanted to look me in the eye. He wanted me to know who was in charge. "No," Mark said, his voice flat and absolute. "Absolutely not. She's not going anywhere. You deal with this, you and your wife. You created this monster. You go and face him." "You don't understand," my dad wailed. "He knows everything about her. He knows where she works, Mark. He knows where you work. He mentioned your parents live in Oakhaven. He said it was a lovely, quiet town. He wants to meet in an hour at the old Shipyard Diner. He said to bring the money we have and to be ready to discuss the terms for the rest." My blood ran cold. He knew about Mark's parents. The threat wasn't just to me anymore. It was spreading, like a poison, to everyone I loved. This man, Alistair Croft, had tendrils that reached into every corner of our lives. He had done his research. We weren't just names on a page. We were fully realized targets with families and routines and vulnerabilities. "He's making you choose, isn't he, Chloe?" Mark said, his eyes locking with mine. The anger in his face was being replaced by a grim, chilling understanding. "He's putting you in Leo's place. Leo hurt his daughter, so he's coming after your family. An eye for an eye, a daughter for a daughter." The sheer, diabolical cruelty of it was breathtaking. Croft wasn't just some thug looking for a payday. He was a predator, and he was toying with us. By threatening Mark's parents, by demanding my presence, he was ensuring my compliance. He was isolating me, making it clear that the police were useless, that my only path forward was through him. "What do we do?" I whispered, looking at Mark. The man outside, the phone call, the threats. It was all designed to paralyze us with fear. Mark took a deep breath, his jaw set. The engineer in him was gone, replaced by something harder, more primal. "We don't play his game," he said. "Not his way." He walked to the drawer in the kitchen, the one we called the junk drawer, and rummaged in the back. He pulled out a small digital voice recorder he used for work meetings. Then he picked up his car keys. "Your dad is terrified," Mark said, his voice methodical and calm, a stark contrast to the chaos around us. "He'll do whatever Croft says. That makes him a liability, but he's also our only link to this guy. So here's what we're going to do. You are going to call your father back. You're going to agree to the meeting." My heart stopped. "What, Mark? No." "Listen to me," he said, holding my shoulders, forcing me to look at him. "You agree. You tell him you're scared, but you'll do it to protect the family. You tell him you'll meet him at the diner, but you won't. I'm going to go. I'm taking the $5,000 your parents have. I'm going to put this recorder in my pocket, and I'm going to get this bastard on tape." It was a crazy, reckless plan, born of desperation. "Mark, he'll kill you. He's expecting me and my dad. He's expecting to intimidate a terrified girl and her pathetic father," Mark countered, his eyes blazing. "He's not expecting her fiancé, an angry engineer who has every word he says being recorded, to show up. I'm not going there to be a hero, Chloe. I'm going there to gather evidence. A recording of him demanding money under threat. That's extortion. That's something the police can actually use. It's our only move." I could see the logic in it, but the fear was overwhelming. I was trading one terror for another, sending the man I loved into a den of wolves. "What about the guy outside?" I asked, my voice trembling. "He's watching for you to leave, not me. I'll take the service exit in the back of the building. By the time he realizes you're not coming, I'll already be there." He pressed the keys and the recorder into my hand. "Call him. Tell him you agree. I'll be back before you know it. I promise." My fingers felt numb as I dialed my father's number. I could barely get the words out, my voice a weak, trembling imitation of compliance. I told him I'd be there. I told him I was leaving now. He sobbed with relief, thanking me, telling me I was doing the right thing, that I was saving them all. The hypocrisy was nauseating. Mark gave me a quick, hard kiss. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me. I love you. And then he was gone, slipping out of the apartment as silently as a ghost. I did as he said, sliding the deadbolt and the chain into place. The silence that descended was 1,000 times worse than the frantic phone calls. I was utterly alone, trapped in my apartment with a predator watching from the street below and the love of my life heading towards an unknown danger. The minutes stretched into an eternity. I paced the floor, my phone clutched in my hand, my thumb hovering over Mark's contact, willing him to call, to text, to tell me he was okay. I kept peering through the blinds, and my heart leaped every time. The man was still there, a patient, menacing statue across the street. Then, after what felt like a lifetime, my phone vibrated. It was a text from Mark. I fumbled to open it, my heart pounding. It wasn't a message. It was a single photo. He must have sent it right before he went inside the diner. The picture was dark, taken from the dashboard of his car, looking across the parking lot towards the entrance of the 24-hour Shipyard diner. There, under the buzzing neon sign, stood my father. He was shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking small and pathetic. But he wasn't alone. Next to him, with a hand resting proprietorially on my father's shoulder, stood a man. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that seemed out of place in the grimy setting. His face was sharp, aquiline, and even from a distance, it radiated an aura of cold, absolute authority. It had to be Alistair Croft. And standing on the other side of Croft, looking pale and gaunt in the sickly light, was my brother Leo. He wasn't in a jail cell. He was out. The image on my phone felt like a punch to the gut. Leo, standing there. Not in an orange jumpsuit, not behind bars, but free. A cold, horrifying realization washed over me. The police station, the DUI, the lawyer, it had all been a stage, a carefully constructed piece of theater. Alistair Croft wasn't just some powerful man. He was powerful enough to pull a suspect out of police custody in the middle of the night. Officer Davies and his calm, professional concern. Was he in on it? Or was he just a pawn, fed a story and sent on his way while the real power players made their moves? My brother's freedom wasn't a blessing. It was a leash. Croft hadn't bailed him out. He had taken possession of him. Leo was the collateral. He was standing there, a ghost at a feast, a living, breathing testament to the reach and influence of the man whose daughter he had almost killed. My parents' panic, my father's terror. It was all real. They weren't just scared of what Croft might do. They were scared of what he had already done. Mark was walking into a situation far more dangerous than we had imagined. He thought he was meeting a man to record a simple threat of extortion. But he was walking into a meeting with a man who could bend the law to his will, a man who held my entire family in the palm of his hand. My plan to get evidence suddenly seemed laughably naive, like bringing a squirt gun to a firefight. I immediately tried to call Mark, my fingers fumbling with the screen. It went straight to voicemail. He had turned his phone off. He was inside. He was already in the belly of the beast. Panic seized me, sharp and suffocating. I was trapped, a prisoner in my own home, while the man I loved was facing a monster. The man across the street was still there, a sentry ensuring I stayed put. I felt a surge of desperate, impotent rage. I couldn't just sit here. I had to do something. My mind raced. The police were a dead end, possibly compromised. My parents were broken puppets. Mark was incommunicado. Who was left? The answer came to me in a flash of memory, a conversation from years ago, a name my father had mentioned with a mixture of resentment and awe. His estranged older brother, my uncle, Uncle Ben. Ben was the family black sheep, a man my straight-laced parents had cut ties with over a decade ago. He was a former investigative journalist who had gotten too close to a story, made some powerful enemies, and ended up doing private security consulting. A euphemism I now understood was likely a whole lot messier than it sounded. My parents called him reckless and dangerous. Right now, reckless and dangerous sounded like exactly what I needed. I hadn't spoken to him since I was a teenager, but I still had his number saved in my phone under Uncle Ben Do Not Call. My hands shaking, I pressed the button. He answered on the second ring, his voice a low, gravelly rasp, unsurprised, as if he'd been expecting a call from a ghost at 5 a.m. "Chloe," he said, not as a question but as a statement. "Ben," I gasped, tears of sheer terror and relief beginning to stream down my face. "I'm in trouble. Horrible trouble." I poured out the entire story, the words tumbling over each other in a frantic, incoherent stream. The 2 a.m. call, the fake kidnapping, the police, the accident, the texts, Alistair Croft, the man outside, Mark walking into the diner. I expected him to be skeptical, to tell me I was overreacting. Instead, he was silent, listening intently. When I finally finished, the only sound was my own ragged breathing. "Alistair Croft," Ben said, and the way he spoke the name sent a shiver down my spine. It was a tone of grim recognition. "You didn't just step in a hornet's nest, kid. You kicked over the whole goddamn hive." "What do I do?" I pleaded. "Mark is in there with him." "Stay put," he commanded, his voice shifting from a casual rasp to a tone of sharp authority. "Don't leave your apartment. Don't talk to anyone. I'll handle Croft. I'm 5 minutes away." 5 minutes away? What was he talking about? He lived 2 states over. Before I could ask, he continued, his voice low and urgent. "The man outside your building, dark coat, standing across the street by a black sedan?" "Yes. How do you know that?" "Because I've been sitting in a van down the block watching him for the past 20 minutes, he said calmly. "Your dad called me an hour ago, panicking, right before he called you back. He told me everything, said he'd made a mess he couldn't clean up. Then the line went dead. I've been on my way ever since." My father had called him. In his moment of ultimate desperation, he had reached out to the one person he knew who could navigate these dark waters. My head was spinning. The web of lies and secrets was more tangled than I could possibly imagine. "What about Mark?" I cried. "He's inside the diner. Croft has my brother." "I see him," Ben said, his voice tight. "The diner's in my line of sight. But Chloe, you need to listen to me very carefully. Your brother is not the only piece of collateral Croft has." "What are you talking about?" There was a pause, and I heard a faint electronic beep on his end, like a device being activated. "When your dad called, he was hysterical. He said Croft made him prove he was serious. He made him offer up something more valuable than his son, something to guarantee your silence and cooperation no matter what happened in that diner." A cold dread, worse than anything I had felt all night, began to creep up my spine. It was a primal, intuitive fear. "Ben, what did he do?" My uncle's voice was grim. "He gave Croft the spare key to your apartment, Chloe. The man across the street isn't there to keep you in. He's there to wait for the signal to let himself in. Croft doesn't have Leo on a leash. He has your mom. She's in the back room of that diner with one of Croft's men, and she doesn't get to leave until he has what he wants." My mother. The word barely registered. My vision tunneled, the walls of my kitchen seeming to close in. The entire night had been a series of trapdoors, each one opening into a deeper, darker pit. My mom wasn't at home, wringing her hands by the phone. She was a hostage, a bargaining chip. My father hadn't just sacrificed my future, he had sacrificed his own wife to save his son. The man outside wasn't a guard, he was a gatekeeper, waiting for the order to either retreat or advance. "Why?" I whispered, the question a ragged exhalation of breath. "Why would he do that?" Because he's a coward. Ben's voice was like gravel scraping against steel. He's a weak man who has spent his entire life enabling your brother, and now that it's all come crashing down, he's throwing anyone he can in front of the train to slow it down. Your money, your fiancé, his wife, anyone but himself or Leo. The truth of his words was a bitter pill. I thought back to the phone call, to my father's pathetic whimpering. It wasn't just fear for Leo. It was the terror of a man who had made a deal with the devil and was watching the fine print incinerate his world. "What does Croft want, Ben?" I asked, my voice numb. "What is the real price?" "It's not about the money anymore, Chloe. Not really. That's just the ante. This is about control. Leo nearly took his daughter from him. Now he's going to dismantle your family piece by piece and make you watch. He wants your dad to hand over the deed to his business. He wants Leo to work for him, off the books, to pay off a debt that will never be paid. He wants your mother as a guarantee, and he wants you. He wants you to be the one who finances all of it, the one who signs the checks and keeps the whole rotten enterprise afloat. He wants to own you." I felt sick. It was a life sentence, a form of modern-day indentured servitude, all born from one night of drug-fueled stupidity. Mark, with his voice recorder and his righteous anger, was walking in there to negotiate terms, thinking he was dealing with a common criminal. He was facing a king demanding fealty. "We have to get them out," I said, a desperate resolve hardening in my voice. "Mark, my mom." "That's the plan," Ben said. I could hear the faint sound of a car engine starting on his end. "Croft thinks he's in control. He's got all his pieces on the board, but he doesn't know about me, and he's about to get a surprise." What are you going to do?" "I'm going to introduce a little chaos into his perfectly ordered world," he said. "The man watching your building is a professional, but he's focused on the front door. He's not expecting company from the rear. I'm going to take him out of the equation. That's step one." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was real. This wasn't a phone call or a text message anymore. It was happening right now, down on the street. "Step two," Ben continued, his voice calm and steady, "is you. The second I give you the signal, you are going to walk out your front door. You're going to get in your car, and you are going to drive away. Don't go to the police. Don't go to your parents' house. Drive north and don't stop until I call you." "I can't just leave them," I cried. "I can't leave Mark." "You're no good to anyone if Croft gets his hands on you," he said sternly. "You are the final piece of his puzzle. If you disappear, his plan falls apart. He loses his leverage. It forces his hand. Trust me, Chloe. This is the only way." I wanted to argue, but I knew he was right. My presence, my fear, my money, I was the fuel for Croft's engine of revenge. If I was gone, the engine would stall. "What's the signal?" I asked, my voice trembling. "You'll know it when you hear it," he said. "Now stay off the phone and be ready to move." He hung up. The silence in the apartment was absolute. I was a coiled spring, every nerve ending alight with a terrible, vibrant energy. I crept to the window, my body pressed against the wall, and peered through the sliver in the blinds. The man was still there, leaning against the black sedan, bathed in the orange glow of a streetlight. He looked bored, confident, a predator at rest. My eyes darted across the street, scanning the shadows, the doorways, the parked cars, looking for any sign of my uncle. I saw nothing. The street was quiet, sleeping, oblivious to the life or death drama unfolding on its sidewalks. Then I saw it. A flicker of movement in the alleyway 2 buildings down, a shadow detaching itself from other shadows. It was a man, dressed in dark clothing, moving with a fluid, silent grace that was almost inhuman. It was Ben. He slipped from the alley and melted behind a large parked SUV directly across the street from Croft's man. He was in position. My breath hitched in my throat. I couldn't look away. It felt like I was watching a scene from a movie, detached and surreal, except the danger was real and the consequences were permanent. Croft's man took a final drag from a cigarette and flicked it into the gutter. As he turned his head to watch it smolder, Ben moved. He wasn't fast, he was instantaneous. He closed the distance across the street in a silent, predatory blur. Before the man could even register his presence, Ben was on him. There was no sound, no struggle, just a swift, economical movement, an arm around the throat, a twist, and the man slumped, boneless, behind the sedan, disappearing from view. It was over in less than 2 seconds. Ben dragged the unconscious body further into the shadows. A moment later, my phone buzzed, a text from Ben. Go. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my keys and my purse, my heart a wild drum against my ribs. I didn't even put on my shoes. I flew to the door, my hand on the deadbolt, but as my fingers touched the cold metal, a sound from outside my apartment froze me in place. It was a soft chime, the chime of the elevator, arriving on my floor. My blood turned to ice. Ben had taken out the guard. No one should be coming up. I pressed my eye to the peephole, my body rigid with terror. The hallway was empty, but I could hear it now, a faint, rhythmic sound, a soft, metallic scraping. It was coming from my front door. Someone was in the hallway right outside, and they were quietly, methodically, picking my lock. The delicate click of a tumbler falling into place inside my lock was the loudest sound I had ever heard. It was a death knell. Ben's plan, my escape, it was all dust. Croft hadn't just had a man watching the building, he had a contingency. A second man, a specialist, already in place. The man outside wasn't a guard, he was a decoy. My mind screamed, "Run!" The back door, the fire escape. But my feet were rooted to the floor, my eyes glued to the distorted image in the peephole. The doorknob began to turn, slowly, silently. This was it. The moment my life irrevocably split into a before and an after. The door swung inward, but the man who stood there wasn't a hulking monster or a slick enforcer. It was Mark. My knees went weak with a relief so profound it was painful. He was pale, his eyes wide and haunted, but he was here. He was safe. He stepped inside and pushed the door shut, his hands shaking as he fumbled with the locks, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Mark! What? How?" I stammered, rushing to him. He put a finger to his lips, his eyes wild with urgency. "No time," he whispered, pulling me away from the door and towards the living room. "They let me go. They told me to come get you." He pulled the small digital recorder from his pocket and pressed stop. A tiny red light blinked off. "I got it, Chloe. I got everything. Croft, your dad, Leo. It's all on here." "My mom," I began. "She's okay. I saw her. They're all still at the diner," he said, his voice a frantic whisper. "It was a test. Croft let me go to see what I would do. If I'd call the cops, if I'd run. He wanted me to lead them right to you, to prove we were all boxed in. His men are probably on their way right now." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. "Plan B. Get to the roof. Now." The roof. Of course. Ben was always a step ahead. "Mark, come on," I grabbed his hand, pulling him towards the hallway that led to the service stairs. "My uncle is here. He said to go to the roof." We moved as one, a silent, desperate scramble through the apartment. We burst into the concrete stairwell, our footsteps echoing like gunshots in the enclosed space. We took the stairs 2 at a time, fueled by adrenaline and terror, bursting onto the flat, gravel-covered roof just as the first rays of dawn were painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and gray. The air was cold and sharp. In the middle of the roof stood Ben. He wasn't alone. Next to him, looking utterly bewildered and terrified, was my father. On the other side of Ben stood a man I recognized instantly from Mark's photo, Alistair Croft. He was no longer the picture of cold authority. His tailored suit was disheveled, his face was pale, and there was a dark, spreading stain on his crisp white shirt just below his ribs. He was leaning heavily on my father for support. "Ben!" I gasped. "Get behind me, both of you," my uncle commanded, his voice calm but his eyes scanning the stairwell door we had just come through. "What happened?" Mark asked, positioning himself protectively in front of me. "Mr. Croft and I had a disagreement," Ben said, a grim smile touching his lips. He nodded towards my father. "Your dad, for the first time in his life, did something brave. When he heard my voice on the comms, I slipped him. He created a diversion inside the diner, gave me the opening I needed to get Croft and your mom out the back. Leo, the little coward, stayed put." My father wouldn't meet my eyes. He was trembling, a man utterly broken by the consequences of his own weakness. Croft groaned, a pained sound that was half fury, half agony. "You're a dead man," Croft rasped, his voice a venomous whisper. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." "Oh, I think I do," Ben said coolly. "You're a predator who preys on the weak. You thought you had this family cornered, but you messed with the wrong black sheep." The stairwell door burst open, and two of Croft's men spilled onto the roof, guns drawn. But they froze, their eyes widening in shock at the scene before them. Their boss, bleeding, held upright by a terrified old man, with my uncle standing calmly beside him. "Drop it, Ben," one of the men shouted, his voice uncertain. Ben ignored him. He looked directly at Croft. "Here's the new deal, Alistair. You are going to call off your dogs. My niece and her fiancé are going to walk out of here. Your daughter is alive and she will get the best care money can buy. Leo will face the legal consequences for what he did, with no interference from you. My sister," he nodded towards the far edge of the roof, where I now saw my mother huddled in a blanket, "is also leaving. This ends, right now." Croft let out a bitter laugh, which turned into a hacking cough. "Or what? You'll kill me? My men will kill all of you a second later." "No," Ben said. He held up a hand, and in it was a small black remote with a single red button. "You're not thinking big enough. I didn't just come for you, I came for your entire operation." He gestured over the edge of the roof towards the shipyard. "That import-export business you run out of Warehouse 7, the one the cops have been trying to get inside for 5 years? Well, a friend of mine dropped off a package about an hour ago. A very big, very loud package. You call off your men, and we all walk away. You don't, and I push this button, and your whole empire goes up in smoke. And this," he patted Mark's pocket, "this little recording of you admitting to extortion, bribery, and witness tampering goes straight to the feds." Croft stared at Ben, his face a mask of disbelief and pure, unadulterated hatred. He saw it in my uncle's eyes, the utter certainty, the willingness to burn everything to the ground. For the first time, Alistair Croft was not in control. He held his hand up, a weak gesture to his men. "Stand down," he gritted out through clenched teeth. Ben nodded. "Good choice." He looked at me, at Mark, at my parents. "Go, now." We didn't need to be told twice. Mark and I helped my mother to her feet, and the four of us, a broken, shattered family, stumbled towards the stairwell door. I took one last look back. Ben was still there, a silhouette against the rising sun, the remote held steady in his hand, a silent guardian watching over our retreat. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings and painful truths. Ben's recording, delivered anonymously to a trusted contact at the DA's office, was a bombshell. Coupled with the threat of what was in the warehouse, Croft's organization crumbled under a massive federal investigation. His daughter, we learned, made a full recovery. Croft himself took a plea deal, disappearing into the federal prison system. Leo, stripped of his protectors, was forced to face the music. He was convicted of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon and sentenced to 7 years. My parents sold their house and business to pay for his legal fees and the civil settlement for the victim. They were broken, humbled, and finally, for the first time, truly apologetic. They understood in the harshest way possible the damage their enablement had caused. Mark and I postponed the wedding. The $15,000 remained in our account, but it felt tainted. We needed time. Time to heal from the betrayal. Time to rebuild the trust that had been so violently shattered. We started going to therapy, both together and separately. It was hard, painful work, unearthing years of family dysfunction. One sunny afternoon, about 6 months later, Mark and I were sitting on a park bench. It was the first time in a long time that the silence between us felt comfortable again. "I spoke to my uncle last night," I said quietly. "How is he?" Mark asked. "He's Ben," I said with a small smile. "He's in another country, consulting on another problem. He said he's proud of me for finally standing up for myself." Mark took my hand. "I'm proud of you, too." We sat for a moment, watching the world go on around us, a world that had almost been stolen from us. The terror of that night had faded, leaving behind scars, but also a new, hard-won strength. We had faced the monster, and we had survived. "You know," I said, squeezing his hand, "I've been thinking. Maybe a big wedding isn't what we need. Maybe we just need a quiet room, a justice of the peace, and a couple of witnesses." Mark smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I think one of those witnesses owes us a hell of a story about what was really in that warehouse." I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that came from deep inside. The sound felt like the sun breaking through the clouds. We still had a long way to go, but for the first time since that 2 a.m. phone call, I knew with absolute certainty that we were going to be okay. We were going to build our future, not on a foundation of savings, but on the unshakable bedrock of what we had survived together.